Caleb Mercer's hands trembled as he held the bundle of letters, letters his dead wife had written but never sent. 5 years of silence. 5 years of wondering why Eleanor had vanished without a word. Now her sister stood in his doorway, dust-covered and exhausted, saying the 3 words that shattered everything he believed. She never stopped loving you. If you want to know what secrets those letters held, and how forgiveness found its way to a broken cowboy's door, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The letter fell from Caleb Mercer's hand. He read it 3 times. 4. The words didn't change. Eleanor is dead. I'm coming to Knight's Crossing. There are things you need to know. Josephine Whitmore. He crumpled the paper and threw it into the fire, watched the edges curl and blacken. Wished he could burn the memories just as easily. 5 years. 5 damn years since Eleanor walked out that door with nothing but a carpet bag and a note that said, "I can't do this anymore." No explanation, no goodbye. Just gone, like morning mist burning off the valley. And now her sister was coming. The sister who'd looked at him like he was dirt beneath her boots at their wedding. The sister who'd written him that poison letter afterward, calling him a failure, a brute, a man who didn't deserve her precious Eleanor. "Let her come," Caleb muttered to the empty room. "I've got nothing to say to any Whitmore." But she was already here. He'd seen the stagecoach pull into town that morning from his position on the ridge. Had watched through his field glasses as a woman in a gray traveling dress stepped down, looked around, and asked someone a question. The man had pointed toward the Mercer ranch. Caleb had ridden home fast, locked the gate, loaded his rifle. Now he sat in the dark, waiting. The knock came at sundown. 3 sharp raps, then silence. Then 3 more. Caleb didn't move. "Mr. Mercer," a woman's voice, steady despite obvious exhaustion. "I know you're in there. I can see the lamp through the curtain." He still didn't move. "I didn't ride 300 miles to talk to your door. Open up." Something in her tone, not pleading, not demanding, just tired and determined, made him reach for the latch. He opened the door 6 inches, enough to see her face. She looked nothing like Eleanor. That was his first thought. Eleanor had been soft. Soft voice, soft hands, soft brown eyes that made promises she couldn't keep. This woman was all edges. Sharp cheekbones, sharp chin, eyes the color of thunderclouds, watching him without blinking. "Josephine," he said. Not a greeting, just an acknowledgement. "It's Josie. Nobody calls me Josephine except my mother, and she's been dead 3 years. I'm sorry for your loss." "Which one, mother or sister?" The question hit like a fist. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Both, I suppose." "You suppose," Josie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "May I come in? Or do you plan to leave me standing on your porch until the coyotes come?" "Maybe I do." "Then you're crueler than Eleanor ever said you were." Caleb flinched. He couldn't help it. "What did Eleanor say about me?" "Open the door and find out." They stared at each other for a long moment. The summer wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and dust, and something sweeter, wildflowers blooming somewhere in the dark. Caleb stepped aside. Josie walked past him without hesitation, her boots clicking against the wooden floor. She stopped in the center of the room and turned slowly, taking in the sparse furniture, the cold fireplace, the single plate and cup on the table. "You live like a monk," she said. "I live like a man who doesn't need much. Or a man who stopped wanting anything." She sat down in the chair by the fireplace without being invited. "You look older than I expected." "It's been 5 years." "War ages a man." So does heartbreak. She tilted her head, studying him. Which one did more damage? Caleb crossed his arms. You didn't come here to discuss my appearance. No, I came to give you these. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a bundle of papers tied with a faded blue ribbon. The same blue ribbon Eleanor used to wear in her hair. Caleb's throat closed up. Letters, Josie said, placing them on the table between them. Eleanor wrote them over the years. One every month, regular as clockwork. She never sent them. Why not? Fear, shame, pride. Take your pick. Josie's voice softened slightly. She was dying, Caleb. The consumption took her slow. 3 months of coughing blood into handkerchiefs while I held her hand and lied about how she'd get better. The image hit him harder than he expected. Eleanor, beautiful, fragile Eleanor, wasting away in some San Francisco boarding house, while he sat here, hating her. When did she pass? His voice came out rough. April 14th, 2 months ago. Josie paused. She asked me to bring you the letters, made me promise on our mother's grave. Caleb looked at the bundle like it might bite him. I don't want them. I don't care what you want. I made a promise to my dying sister, and I intend to keep it. Josie stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. Read them, burn them, use them to start your morning fire. That's your choice. But I've done what I came to do. She started toward the door. Wait. Josie stopped, but didn't turn around. That's it? Caleb demanded. You ride 300 miles, drop a pile of letters on my table, and leave? What else is there to say? You could tell me why. The words tore out of him before he could stop them. Why she left, why she never wrote, why she let me spend 5 years thinking I'd done something so terrible she couldn't even look at me. Josie turned slowly. Her expression had changed, the sharpness softened by something that looked almost like pity. The letters will tell you more than I can. I'm asking you, and I'm telling you to read the letters. Damn the letters! Caleb's fist slammed against the table. The bundle jumped. I want to hear it from someone who was there. Someone who watched her walk away from this marriage and never looked back. Josie's eyes flashed. Never looked back? Is that what you think? What else am I supposed to think? She left me, Josephine. No warning, no explanation. Just a note that said she couldn't do it anymore, like I was some chore she'd grown tired of. You don't know anything. Then tell me. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy as summer heat. Finally, Josie spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She lost the baby, Caleb. The words didn't make sense at first. Caleb heard them, but they seemed to come from very far away, like someone shouting across a canyon. What baby? Josie's face crumpled for just a moment before she pulled it back together. She was pregnant when she left, 3 months along. She was going to tell you that night, had the whole thing planned. A special dinner, candles. She'd even bought a little pair of booties from the general store. Caleb grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. No, she would have told me. She was going to. But then she started bleeding, right there in the kitchen, while she was cooking your supper. By the time the doctor came, it was over. The room spun. Caleb closed his eyes, trying to find something solid to hold on to. Why didn't she tell me? He whispered. Because she thought it was her fault. Because her mother had lost 3 babies before having us, and Eleanor always feared she'd be the same. Because she looked at you sleeping that night and decided she couldn't bear to see the disappointment in your eyes. I wouldn't have been disappointed. I would have held her, comforted her, told her it didn't matter. Josie's voice cracked. She knew that's what you'd say, and she couldn't stand it. The kindness would have broken her worse than any cruelty. Caleb sank into the chair. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. So she left, he said. Instead of letting me help her, she just left. She wasn't thinking straight. The grief, the shame, the fear, it all twisted together until running seemed like the only option. Josie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She regretted it every single day. That's what the letters are about. 5 years of regret and apologies that she was too scared to send. Caleb stared at the bundle on the table. The blue ribbon. Eleanor's ribbon. "I thought she hated me," he said. "I thought I'd done something so wrong she couldn't forgive me." "You didn't do anything wrong. That's the tragedy of it." Josie sat back down, suddenly looking as exhausted as she must have felt. "She loved you, Caleb. Until her last breath, she loved you. But love isn't always enough to make a person brave." They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the wind had died down. The night was perfectly still, as if the whole world was holding its breath. "I blamed myself," Caleb finally said. "Every day for 5 years. Went over every conversation, every argument, every time I raised my voice or came home late or forgot to say something sweet. Tried to figure out which moment was the one that drove her away. It wasn't any of them. I know that now." He looked up at Josie. "But knowing doesn't erase 5 years of guilt." "No, it doesn't." She met his gaze steadily. "I blamed you too. My whole family did. Father said you must have been cruel to her, cold, that no woman leaves a good husband without reason. I believed him. And now? Now I've read the letters." Josie's voice dropped. "She wrote about you like you hung the moon, Caleb. About your kindness, your patience, the way you made her laugh. She wrote about the guilt of leaving and the fear of coming back. And she wrote about watching from a distance. She came back once, did you know that?" Caleb's head snapped up. "What?" "2 years ago. She took the stage to Knight's Crossing, walked to the edge of your property, and watched you working in the field for an hour. Then she turned around and went back to San Francisco. Why didn't she? She saw you talking to a woman. Dark hair, pretty smile. Eleanor convinced herself you'd moved on, that you were happier without her. That was probably Sarah Blake, the widow who runs the boarding house. She brings me pie sometimes because she feels sorry for me." Caleb laughed bitterly. "There's never been anyone else. Not once." "Eleanor didn't know that. Because she didn't ask. Because she didn't trust me enough to just walk up and ask." "Can you blame her?" "Yes." The word came out hard and sharp. "I can blame her for a lot of things, Josephine. For leaving without a word. For stealing 5 years of my life. For dying before I could tell her." He stopped. His voice broke. Josie watched him struggle to compose himself. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. "Tell her what?" Caleb shook his head. The words wouldn't come. "Read the letters," Josie said quietly. "They won't give you back those 5 years. Nothing can. But they might give you something else." "What?" "Peace, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it." She stood up, gathering her satchel. "There's a boarding house in town. I'll stay there tonight and leave on the morning stage." "Wait." Caleb stood too, blocking her path to the door. "You just told me my wife spent 5 years dying of regret and guilt. And you're leaving?" "What else is there to do?" "I don't know. But this doesn't feel finished." Josie studied him for a long moment. "You're right. It doesn't. But some things can't be finished in one night." "Then stay." The word surprised both of them. Caleb hadn't meant to say it, but now that it was out, he realized he meant it. "Stay," he repeated. "Not at the boarding house. Here. There's a guest room. It's small, but it's clean. Stay until the letters make sense. Until I understand. You're inviting a Whitmore into your home? After everything my family said about you? You're not your family. And right now, you're the only person alive who knew Eleanor at the end. The only person who can help me understand what happened. Josie hesitated. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the desire to be done with this painful errand warring with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or duty, or something she wasn't ready to name. 1 week, she finally said. I'll stay 1 week. After that, I need to get back to San Francisco. I have patients who depend on me. Patients? I'm a nurse at the Sisters of Mercy Hospital. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Another thing my family disapproves of. A Whitmore woman working like a common servant. Seems like you and Eleanor had more in common than I thought. We both had a talent for disappointing people. Josie set her satchel back down. Which room is mine? Caleb pointed down the narrow hallway. Second door on the left. There might be dust. I don't get many visitors. I've slept in worse places. She started toward the room, then paused. Caleb? Yes? I'm sorry. For the letter I sent you after Eleanor left. The things I said. I didn't know the truth. I was angry and scared, and I needed someone to blame. You weren't wrong about everything. I wasn't perfect husband. I worked too much, talked too little. Maybe if I'd paid more attention. Don't. Josie cut him off firmly. Don't start that cycle again. I just spent 3 months watching my sister die of guilt and regret. It's a poison that kills slowly, and it doesn't help anyone. Then what does help? She considered the question seriously. I don't know yet. Maybe that's what we'll figure out this week. She disappeared into the guest room, closing the door softly behind her. Caleb stood alone in the main room, staring at the bundle of letters on the table. The blue ribbon seemed to glow in the lamplight, bright as a fresh bruise. He picked up the bundle, untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated 5 years ago, just weeks after Eleanor left. My dearest Caleb, I know you hate me. I hate myself more. Please believe that I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much to let you watch me fall apart. Caleb read the first paragraph, then the second. By the third, his vision had blurred with tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in 5 years. He read until the lamp burned low, until the words blurred together and his eyes couldn't stay open anymore. Until Eleanor's voice, preserved in faded ink on yellowed paper, had filled every corner of the silent house. And in the small guest room down the hall, Josephine Whitmore lay awake in the darkness, listening to the sound of a grown man finally allowing himself to grieve. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The townspeople would talk. Old wounds would be reopened. The complicated dance of forgiveness would begin. But tonight, in this dusty ranch house on the edge of the California wilderness, something had shifted. A door that had been locked for 5 years had cracked open, just enough to let a sliver of light through. Neither of them knew what would grow in that light. Neither of them was ready to guess. Caleb woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, he forgot. For a moment, he thought Eleanor was in the kitchen, humming that song she loved, the one about the river and the willow tree. He almost called out her name. Then he remembered. Eleanor was dead. Her sister was here, and everything he thought he knew about the last 5 years had been a lie. He found Josie at the stove, stirring something in a pot. She'd changed out of her traveling clothes into a simple blue dress, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical knot. She didn't turn around when he entered. I found oats in your pantry, she said, and some dried apples. Hope you don't mind. I don't remember the last time someone cooked breakfast in this kitchen. That's obvious. Your supplies are a disgrace. Now she turned, holding out a cup of coffee. When did you last go to town for provisions? 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. You're living on beans and jerky, aren't you? It's enough. It's not. She set the cup in his hands, her fingers brushing his. Both of them pretended not to notice. Sit down. Eat something. You look like death. You're not exactly glowing yourself. I didn't sleep. Neither did I. They stared at each other across the small kitchen. The morning light was harsh, unforgiving. It showed every line on Caleb's face, every shadow under Josie's eyes. Did you read them? She asked. The letters? Some of them. I couldn't finish. Too painful? Too much. Caleb sat down heavily at the table. 5 years, Josephine. 5 years of her thoughts, her regrets, her love. All of it sitting in a box while I was here, thinking she'd forgotten me. Josie placed a bowl of oatmeal in front of him. She never forgot you, not for a single day. That almost makes it worse. I know. She sat across from him with her own bowl, but didn't eat. Just pushed the oats around with her spoon, watching him. The townspeople will have seen me arrive yesterday, she said. They'll be talking. Let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're not the scandalous woman staying alone with her dead sister's husband. Caleb's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Is that what they'll think? That's exactly what they'll think. Then maybe you should stay at the boarding house after all. Maybe. Josie's jaw tightened. But I didn't ride 300 miles to let small-town gossip chase me away. I've faced worse than wagging tongues. What have you faced? The question came out before Caleb could stop it. Josie's eyes flickered with something. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. That's a long story. I've got time. You've got cattle to tend, and fences to mend, and a ranch that's been neglected for God knows how long. The cattle can wait. No, they can't. That's the problem with living things. They don't wait for your grief to finish. Josie stood up abruptly. Go do your work, Caleb. I'll be here when you get back. And then? And then we'll talk more. About Eleanor. About the letters. About whatever you need to understand. Caleb wanted to argue. Wanted to sit here all day and drag every piece of information out of her. Every memory. Every detail of Eleanor's final years. But she was right. The ranch didn't care about his broken heart. The animals needed feeding. The work needed doing. I'll be back by noon, he said. I'll have lunch ready. It was such a domestic exchange. Such an ordinary thing to say. But nothing about this situation was ordinary, and they both knew it. Caleb grabbed his hat from the hook by the door, paused with his hand on the latch. Josephine. Josie. Josie. He turned to look at her. Thank you. For coming. For bringing the letters. For telling me the truth about the baby. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Don't thank me yet. There's more in those letters you haven't read. Things that might make you wish I'd never come. Like what? Read them and find out. She turned back to the stove, dismissing him. Caleb stood there for a moment longer, watching the rigid line of her shoulders, the controlled way she moved. She was holding something back, something important. But pushing wouldn't help. He'd learned that much from his marriage to Eleanor. Some truths couldn't be forced. They had to be given freely, or not at all. He walked out into the morning sun, trying to ignore the feeling that his whole world had tilted sideways overnight. The work helped. It always did. There was something honest about physical labor. Something clean. Your body knew what to do even when your mind was chaos. Lift, carry, hammer, ride. Simple actions with simple results. Caleb fixed a section of fence that had been sagging for months. Moved the cattle to fresh grazing land. cleaned the water troughs. Let the rhythm of familiar tasks drown out the storm in his head. But Eleanor's words kept surfacing, fragments from the letters he'd read last night, floating up like debris after a flood. I dream about our bedroom, the way the light came through the curtains in the morning, the sound of your breathing beside me. I saw a man today who walked like you. I followed him for 3 blocks before I realized my mistake. Sometimes I think about coming home. Then I remember I don't have that right anymore. By mid-morning, Caleb had to stop, had to lean against the fence post and breathe through the tightness in his chest. 5 years. 5 years of this longing, this regret, this desperate love, all of it locked away in a box, while Eleanor wasted away in some cold San Francisco room. While he sat here, nurturing his bitterness like a prize-winning crop. "Mr. Mercer!" The shout came from the road. Caleb looked up to see Hank, his older ranch hand, riding toward him at a quick trot. "What is it?" "Visitor in town asking about you. Fancy-looking fellow. City clothes." Hank pulled up his horse, looking uncomfortable. "He's asking questions about your wife." Caleb's blood went cold. What kind of questions? Where she went, why she left, whether you two were divorced proper. Who is he? Didn't give a name, but he's been buying drinks at the saloon, loosening tongues. Hank shifted in his saddle. "Boss, I don't like the feel of it. Something ain't right about this fella." Caleb was already swinging onto his horse. "Stay here. Keep working. I'll handle this." "Want me to fetch the sheriff?" "No, not yet. Let me find out what this is about first." He rode hard toward town, his mind racing faster than his horse's hooves. Who would be asking about Eleanor? Her father had died years ago. Josie had mentioned that. Her mother, too. There were no brothers, no other family that he knew of. Unless... A terrible thought crept in. One he didn't want to examine too closely. Unless Eleanor had found someone else. He pushed the thought away, focused on the ride, on the feel of the wind against his face and the solid rhythm of the horse beneath him. Knight's Crossing wasn't much of a town. A main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a boarding house, and a handful of other businesses that came and went with the fortunes of the local ranchers. Caleb knew every face, every name, every piece of gossip that circulated through its dusty streets. So when he pushed through the saloon doors and saw the stranger, he knew immediately that this man didn't belong. City clothes, like Hank had said, a suit that cost more than most cowboys earned in a year. Soft hands that had never known a day's hard work. Slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The stranger was talking to old Pete Morrison, who'd worked as a surveyor before his eyes went bad. Pete was nodding along, too polite to tell the man to mind his own business. Caleb crossed the room in 4 strides. "Something I can help you with, mister?" The stranger turned. His smile widened, but his eyes stayed flat and cold. "Ah, you must be Caleb Mercer, the famous abandoned husband." "Who's asking?" "My name is Victor Ashworth. I'm an attorney from San Francisco." He reached into his jacket and produced a card, holding it out like an offering. "I represent the estate of Eleanor Whitmore Mercer." Caleb didn't take the card. Eleanor didn't have an estate. "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Mercer. Very wrong indeed." The saloon had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. The bartender, the handful of morning drinkers, old Pete with his milky eyes. Caleb could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. "Let's talk outside," he said. "I prefer to discuss this in private. Perhaps at your ranch?" "My ranch isn't open to strangers." "I'm hardly a stranger, Mr. Mercer. I was Eleanor's attorney for the last 3 years of her life. I knew her quite well." That cold smile again. Quite well indeed. Something in his tone made Caleb's fist clench. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your wife, your estranged wife, left behind certain assets and certain complications. I'm here to sort them out. What complications? The kind that require discretion. Ashworth tucked his card back into his pocket. I'll be at the boarding house for the next few days. When you're ready to discuss this like civilized men, you know where to find me. He tipped his hat, an insultingly casual gesture, and walked out of the saloon. Caleb stood frozen, his heart pounding. You all right, Caleb? The bartender's voice seemed to come from very far away. Fine, I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Eleanor had an attorney? An estate? What had she been doing in San Francisco all those years? And why did Victor Ashworth look at him like a cat watching a mouse? He rode home twice as fast as he'd ridden into town. Found Josie on the porch, a book in her lap, her face lifting as she heard the hoofbeats. What happened? She stood up, immediately reading his expression. What's wrong? Victor Ashworth. The color drained from Josie's face. Actually drained, like water from a basin. Her book fell to the porch floor with a thud. He's here? You know him. I know him. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know him, and I prayed to God you'd never have to meet him. Who is he, Josie? What was he to Eleanor? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked into the house. Caleb followed, his pulse thundering in his ears. Josie, answer me. She was standing by the fireplace, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in, or keep something out. He was her employer, she said finally, for the first 2 years after she left you. She worked as a housekeeper for his family. An attorney needs a housekeeper? His wife needed a housekeeper. His wife was... Josie's voice cracked. His wife was an invalid, bedridden, and Victor Ashworth was a man with appetites. The implication hit Caleb like a physical blow. No. I'm sorry, Caleb. You're telling me, my wife. I'm telling you my sister was desperate and alone and grieving, and a wealthy man offered her comfort. I'm telling you she made choices she wasn't proud of. Josie finally turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. I'm telling you that Victor Ashworth has been trying to control Eleanor's legacy ever since she died. And now he's here, and that terrifies me. What legacy? She didn't have any money. She had money, Caleb. She had money because Victor gave it to her. Called it a gift, but it was guilt money, hush money, payment for services rendered. The bitterness in Josie's voice was sharp enough to cut. When she got sick, she tried to give it back. He wouldn't take it. So she put it in a trust. A trust for what? For you. The room spun. Caleb grabbed the back of a chair, the same chair he'd grabbed last night when Josie told him about the baby. She left me money. Money from her. From him. She left you everything she had. The house in San Francisco, the savings, all of it. She wanted you to have a fresh start, to rebuild. Josie's voice broke completely. She thought it was the least she could do, after everything she'd taken from you. I don't want his money. It's not his money anymore. It's yours. Legally, irrevocably yours. That's what the letters explain, the ones you haven't read yet. She spent the last year of her life making sure Victor couldn't contest the will. Why would he contest it? Because he thinks he's owed something. Because Eleanor ended things with him 3 years ago, and he's never forgiven her. Because he's a small, petty man who can't stand losing. Josie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And because there's one more thing you don't know. What more could there possibly be? Josie opened her mouth, closed it. opened it again. Eleanor had a child. The words hung in the air between them. A daughter, born 2 years after she left you. Josie's voice was barely audible now. Victor's daughter. Her name is Clara. She's 3 years old, and Eleanor left her to me. Caleb couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stand there while his entire understanding of the past 5 years crumbled to dust. Eleanor had a child with another man, a child she'd hidden from him, from everyone, while she wrote letters about how much she loved him and how sorry she was. Where is she now? His voice didn't sound like his own. The child. With the Sisters of Mercy, in San Francisco. The nuns are caring for her until I return. Josie stepped toward him. Caleb, I know this is... Don't. He held up a hand, stopping her. Don't tell me you know how this feels. You couldn't possibly know. You're right. I couldn't. She stopped where she was, giving him space. But I know my sister loved you. Whatever else she did, whatever mistakes she made, that love was real. Was it? Or was she just too guilty to let go? Maybe both. Maybe love and guilt aren't as separate as we want them to be. Caleb laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You should have told me. Last night when you showed up with your letters and your forgiveness, you should have told me all of it. Would you have let me stay? No. That's why I didn't tell you. Josie's chin lifted. I needed time. Time to explain, to help you understand. Understand what? That my wife was another man's mistress? That she had his child while writing me love letters? That she left me money I don't want and complications I didn't ask for? Understand that she was human. Josie's voice rose for the first time since he'd met her. Understand that she was broken and scared and did terrible things for what she thought were good reasons. Understand that none of us get through this life without hurting someone. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard. Victor will come for you, Josie said finally. He wants the inheritance. He wants Clara. And he'll use every dirty trick he knows to get them. Why does he want the child? He didn't even acknowledge her. Because Eleanor's will names Clara as the secondary beneficiary. If you refuse the inheritance, it goes to her. And if Victor can get custody of Clara, he gets the money. He gets everything Eleanor worked so hard to protect. Caleb turned away, walked to the window, stared out at the land he'd worked so hard to build. The future he'd tried to create with a woman who was writing love letters to him while sharing another man's bed. Why didn't she come home? He asked quietly. If she loved me so much, why didn't she just come home? Because she was ashamed. Because she thought you'd never forgive her. Because every year that passed made it harder to imagine facing you. Josie's voice was gentle now, all the fight gone out of it. And because, by the time she finally had the courage, she was dying. She could have written a real letter, one she actually sent. She tried, 100 times. I watched her start and stop, write and tear up, seal and unseal. Josie moved closer, standing just behind him. Fear is a powerful thing, Caleb. It makes cowards of us all. He didn't turn around, couldn't look at her. What do you want me to do? He asked. I want you to read the rest of the letters. I want you to understand what happened, all of it, before Victor Ashworth poisons your mind with his version. And then I want you to make a choice. What choice? Whether to let the past destroy you, or whether to help me protect Clara from a man who sees her only as a means to an end. Caleb finally turned. Josie was close, closer than he'd realized. Her gray eyes were steady on his face, waiting. Why do you care what I do? You didn't even know me before yesterday. I didn't know you, but I knew Eleanor's heart. I read her letters before I brought them to you. I know what you meant to her, And I know what she hoped you might become. What's that? The man who forgives. The man who moves forward. The man who doesn't let one woman's mistakes define the rest of his life. That's a lot to ask. I know. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. But Eleanor believed you could be that man, and so do I. Caleb studied her face, the sharp features, the determined jaw, the eyes that held pain and hope in equal measure. She was nothing like Eleanor, nothing at all. And yet... "I'll read the letters," he said, "all of them, tonight. And then? And then I'll decide what kind of man I want to be." Josie nodded slowly. "That's all I can ask." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, paused in the doorway. "Caleb?" "Yes?" "Whatever you decide about Eleanor, whatever you decide about the inheritance, please don't let Victor win. He's already taken enough from this family." "What did he take from you?" Josie's expression flickered. "My faith in good men. Until now." She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts. That night he read every letter, every single one. He read about Eleanor's shame and her sorrow, about the job with the Ashworths that started as honest work and became something else, about Victor's persistence, his charm, his slow seduction of a woman too broken to resist. He read about Clara's birth, Eleanor's terror that Victor would take the child, her decision to leave his household, to build a new life with the money she'd saved, to raise her daughter alone rather than let her become a pawn in Victor's games. He read about the consumption that started as a cough and ended as a death sentence, about Eleanor's frantic efforts to protect Clara's future, about the will that left everything to Caleb, the husband she'd wronged, the man she'd never stopped loving. And he read the last letter, the one dated 3 days before she died. "My dearest Caleb, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Josie promised to bring you these letters, and I know she'll keep that promise. She's stronger than I ever was. I've done terrible things. I've hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I want you to know that through all of it, through every dark day and every shameful choice, I never stopped being your wife in my heart. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for one thing. Clara is innocent. She didn't choose her father. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. If there's any goodness left in you, and I know there is, please don't let Victor have her. Please help Josie protect my daughter. You were always the best man I knew, Caleb. That hasn't changed. All my love, forever and always, Eleanor." Caleb set the letter down. Outside, the summer night was alive with sounds. Crickets, coyotes, the distant lowing of cattle. Inside, the silence was absolute. He sat there for a long time, holding the last words his wife had ever written. Then he stood up, walked down the hall, and knocked on Josie's door. "It's late." Her voice was muffled, sleepy. "I know, but I've made my decision." The door opened. Josie stood there in her nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes searching his face. "And?" "Victor Ashworth isn't getting that child, and he isn't getting a single cent of that money." Caleb's jaw set. "I don't know what kind of man I'm supposed to be, but I know what kind I won't be. I won't let a little girl pay for her mother's mistakes." Josie's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Caleb." "Don't thank me yet. We've got a fight ahead of us." "I know." "Are you ready for it?" Josie wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, met his gaze with a strength that reminded him, for just a moment, of why he'd fallen in love with a Whitmore woman in the first place. "I've been ready my whole life." The next morning came too fast. Caleb hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Eleanor's handwriting, saw Victor Ashworth's cold smile, saw a 3-year-old girl he'd never met, waiting in a convent for someone to save her. He was in the kitchen before dawn, staring at cold coffee, when Josie appeared. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel worse." She sat across from him. No pretense of breakfast this time. No small talk. "We need a plan," she said. "I know." "Victor won't wait. He's already in town, already asking questions. He'll make his move soon." "What kind of move?" "Legal, probably. He's an attorney. He knows how to use the law like a weapon." Josie's hands were clasped on the table, knuckles white. "He'll claim you abandoned Eleanor, that you're unfit to inherit, that Clara belongs with her father." "Can he do that?" "He can try. And in California, with the right judge, the right bribes." She didn't finish. Caleb pushed the cold coffee away. "Then we need our own attorney. There's one in Sacramento, a man named Thomas Reed. Eleanor trusted him. He helped her draft the will." "How far is Sacramento?" 2 days by stage, 1 if you ride hard." "I'll leave today." "No!" Josie shook her head firmly. "You can't leave the ranch unattended with Victor sniffing around. He'll use it against you. Say you're irresponsible, negligent." "Then what do you suggest?" "I'll go. I know Thomas Reed. I know what documents we need." She hesitated. "But that means leaving you alone. With Victor." "I can handle Victor Ashworth." "Can you? Without losing your temper and giving him exactly what he wants?" Caleb's jaw tightened. She was right. He knew she was right. The rage simmering in his gut wanted nothing more than to put his fist through Victor's smug face. "I'll be careful," he said. "Promise me, Caleb. Whatever he says, whatever he does, don't give him ammunition." "I promise." Josie studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll leave on the morning stage. Should be back in 4 days, maybe 5. She stood up. "Keep the letters safe. They're evidence of Eleanor's intentions." "I'll guard them with my life." "Good." She paused at the doorway. "And Caleb?" "Yes?" "Don't read the last bundle. The ones tied with the red ribbon?" "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because you're not ready. And neither am I." She was gone before he could ask what she meant. Caleb drove Josie to town in the wagon, both of them silent for most of the journey. The stagecoach was already loading when they arrived. 4 days, Josie said as he helped her down. 5 at most. "I'll be here." She picked up her bag, then stopped, turned back to him. "He'll try to get inside your head, Caleb. That's what he does. He finds the weak spot and he digs in." Her voice dropped. "Don't let him." "I won't." "I mean it. Whatever he tells you about Eleanor, whatever poison he tries to spread—" "Josie." Caleb took her hand, just briefly, just enough to stop her words. "I know who Eleanor was. The letters showed me that. Nothing Victor says can change it now." She looked down at their joined hands. When she looked up again, there was something new in her eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. "I'll be back as soon as I can." "Be safe." She climbed aboard the stage. Caleb watched until it disappeared around the bend, trailing dust in the summer heat. Then he turned and walked straight into Victor Ashworth. "Mr. Mercer! What a pleasant surprise!" Victor was standing outside the general store, a cheroot between his fingers, looking like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Nothing pleasant about it," Caleb said. Now, there's no need for hostility. We're both reasonable men." "Are we?" "I'd like to think so." Victor fell into step beside him as Caleb walked toward his wagon. "I've been doing some research, Mr. Mercer. Fascinating story, yours. War hero, Successful rancher. Devoted husband, abandoned by his wife. Get to the point. The point is that I understand your position. You've been wronged. You deserve compensation. Victor's smile widened. I'm prepared to offer you a very generous settlement. Caleb stopped walking. Settlement for what? For dropping any claim to Eleanor's estate. For signing over custody rights to little Clara. Victor's voice was smooth as oil. $100,000, Mr. Mercer. Think about what that could do for your ranch. $100,000. More money than Caleb would see in 10 lifetimes. And if I refuse? Then things get complicated. Courts, lawyers, testimony. Victor shrugged. Your wife's history will become public record. Every shameful detail, every sordid encounter. Is that what you want? Caleb's hands curled into fists. He could feel the rage rising, could feel the promise he'd made to Josie slipping away. Eleanor's dead, he said through gritted teeth. She can't be hurt anymore. No, but you can. And so can that self-righteous sister of hers. Victor leaned closer. Did she tell you everything, Mr. Mercer? Did she tell you about the nights Eleanor spent in my bed? The things she did to keep me happy? Don't react. Don't give him what he wants. Did she tell you that Eleanor begged me not to leave my wife? That she wept when I said I was going back to Margaret? Victor's voice dropped to a whisper. Your beloved Eleanor wasn't a victim, Mr. Mercer. She was a willing participant in her own degradation. Caleb's fist connected with Victor's jaw before he even knew he was swinging. Victor staggered back, crashing into a hitching post. His cheroot flew from his hand. Blood trickled from his split lip. You'll regret that, Victor said, dabbing at his mouth with a handkerchief. But he was smiling. Actually smiling. Assault, Mr. Mercer, in front of witnesses. Thank you for making this so easy. Caleb looked around. Half the town was watching. The blacksmith, the shopkeeper's wife, old Pete Morrison, all of them staring with wide eyes. Tell your attorney, Victor said, straightening his jacket. Tell him the cowboy with the temper just handed me my case. He walked away, still smiling, leaving Caleb standing in the street with his bleeding knuckles and his broken promise. The ride back to the ranch was the longest of Caleb's life. What had he done? One moment of rage, one swing of his fist, and he'd given Victor exactly what he wanted. Evidence of violence, proof of an unstable temperament, ammunition for whatever legal battle lay ahead. Josie would be furious. And she'd be right. He was putting the horses in the barn when Hank appeared. Boss, everything all right? No, Hank, everything is not all right. Heard there was some trouble in town. Of course he had. In a place like Knight's Crossing, news traveled faster than wildfire. I made a mistake, Caleb said. A bad one. The fancy lawyer? Yeah. Hank was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Some men need hitting, boss. Ain't no shame in giving them what they deserve. There is, when it costs you everything. Caleb finished with the horses and walked to the house. The bundle of letters was still on the table where he'd left them. The blue ribbon. The ones tied with red ribbon that Josie had warned him not to read. Don't read them. Not yet. He picked up the red bundle, turned it over in his hands. What could possibly be worse than what he already knew? What secret could Eleanor have kept that would hurt more than the affair, the child, the years of lies? His fingers found the ribbon, started to pull. A knock at the door stopped him. He set the bundle down and crossed to the door, expecting Hank with more questions, or maybe one of the townspeople come to gossip. It was Reverend Samuel Goodwin. The old preacher stood on the porch, his hat in his hands, his face grave. Caleb, May I come in?" "Of course, Reverend." Samuel settled into a chair by the fireplace, accepting the water Caleb offered. He didn't speak right away, just sat there, gathering his thoughts. "I heard about the incident in town," he finally said. "I'm sure you did. Victor Ashworth came to see me afterward, asked if I'd testify about your character." Samuel's eyes met Caleb's. "I told him I'd be happy to. I told him you're the finest man I know." The relief was physical. Caleb felt his shoulders drop, his breath come easier. "Thank you, Reverend." "Don't thank me yet. I came here to tell you something else. Something that man said that you need to know." "What?" Samuel's weathered face tightened. "He said he sent a telegram to San Francisco, to a colleague at the court there. He's filing for emergency custody of the child." Caleb went cold. "He can't do that." "He can try, and with Josephine on her way to Sacramento, there's no one to stop him." "How long?" "The hearing is in 5 days. If no one appears to contest it, Clara becomes his." "Yes." Caleb stood up so fast his chair fell over. "I have to get to San Francisco." "That's 3 days' ride, Caleb, minimum. And Ashworth knows you can't leave the ranch, not without—" "To hell with the ranch!" Caleb was already grabbing his saddlebags. "To hell with all of it! That little girl is not going to that monster." "Caleb," Samuel's voice was firm. "Think. If you leave now, Victor will claim you abandoned your property. He'll say you're reckless, impulsive. He'll use it against you." "Then what am I supposed to do? Sit here while he takes her?" "Send someone you trust, someone who can speak for you." "There's no one. Josie is in Sacramento, and everyone else—" Caleb stopped, a thought forming, a terrible, desperate thought. "Reverend, would you go?" Samuel's eyes widened. "Me?" "You're a man of God. The courts would listen to you. You could petition on my behalf, ask for a delay until Josie and the attorney can get there." "I'm an old man, Caleb. I haven't traveled farther than Stockton in 20 years. "Please." Caleb knelt beside the Reverend's chair. "I know I'm asking too much. I know it's dangerous and difficult and probably pointless. But that child has no one else. Eleanor trusted me to protect her, and I'm asking you to help me keep that promise." Samuel looked at him for a long moment. Then he placed his hand on Caleb's head, like a benediction. "Eleanor was one of my flock once, before she lost her way." His voice was soft. "I failed her, Caleb. Maybe we all did. But I won't fail her daughter." "You'll go?" "I'll leave tonight. The evening stage goes through Stockton. I can catch a train from there." "Thank you." The words weren't enough. Nothing was enough. "Thank you, Reverend." "Don't thank me yet. Pray. Pray that I'm not too late." Samuel left as the sun was setting. Caleb watched him go. This old man, riding off to fight a battle that wasn't his, for a child he'd never met, because a broken cowboy had asked him to. Maybe there was still good in the world. Maybe there was still hope. The next 3 days were the longest of Caleb's life. He worked the ranch from dawn to dusk, trying to exhaust himself enough to sleep. It didn't work. Every night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining Victor Ashworth's hands on a 3-year-old girl. Eleanor's daughter, his wife's daughter. Not his, but somehow, impossibly, still his responsibility. On the 3rd day, Diego rode in from the north pasture with news. "Rider comin', boss. Fast." Caleb grabbed his rifle and went to the porch. The figure approaching was small, riding hard, pushing the horse to its limit. Josie. She'd made it back in 3 days instead of 4. She was off the horse before it fully stopped, stumbling with exhaustion, but her eyes were blazing. "We have a problem." "I know. Victor filed for custody. I sent the Reverend to... It's worse than that. Josie grabbed his arm. Thomas Reed is dead. The words didn't make sense. What? Murdered 3 days ago, stabbed in his office. Her voice was shaking now. And all of Eleanor's legal documents, the will, the trust, the custody papers, they're gone. Caleb felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Victor. It has to be, but we can't prove it. Without those documents, Clara is just the illegitimate daughter of a dead woman. Victor can claim anything he wants. Josie's face was pale, her hands trembling. It's over, Caleb. We've lost. No. He didn't know where the certainty came from, but it was there, solid as stone. We haven't lost. Not yet. What can we do? The documents are gone. The attorney is dead. Victor has witnesses to your assault. We have nothing. We have the letters. Josie stared at him. The letters? Eleanor's letters, in her own handwriting, her intentions, her wishes, her love for Clara. It's not a legal document, but it's evidence of what she wanted. Will that be enough? I don't know, but it's what we have. Josie was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. There's one more thing. I found this at Thomas Reed's office, hidden behind a loose board in his desk. She handed it to Caleb. I think he knew someone was coming for him. Caleb unfolded the paper. It was a certificate, official-looking, with stamps and signatures. A marriage certificate. Victor Ashworth and Eleanor Whitmore, married in Sacramento, dated 4 years ago. He married her, Caleb whispered. Yes, while his first wife was still alive. It wasn't legal. Margaret Ashworth didn't die until 2 years ago, but Victor went through the ceremony anyway, probably to convince Eleanor he was serious. So Clara was born during what Eleanor believed was a valid marriage. She thought she was Victor's legal wife. Josie's voice hardened. He lied to her, Caleb. He made her think she was married, made her think Clara was legitimate. And when she found out the truth, when she discovered Margaret was still alive, she left him. She tried to, but he wouldn't let her go, threatened to expose her, to take Clara, to ruin her completely. The only way she escaped was by signing over everything she'd saved, everything except what she managed to hide. Caleb looked at the certificate again. Victor's signature, Eleanor's signature, a minister's seal. This proves he committed fraud, he said slowly. This proves he deceived Eleanor. It proves more than that. Josie took a deep breath. It proves that Victor can't claim paternal rights without admitting to bigamy. It's a federal crime, Caleb. He could go to prison. So we have leverage. We have a weapon. The question is whether we have the courage to use it. Caleb thought about Victor's cold smile, his threats, his willingness to destroy anyone who stood in his way. Then he thought about Clara, 3 years old, alone, waiting for someone to save her. I have the courage, he said. Do you? Josie met his eyes. For a moment, he saw the fear there, the doubt, the weight of everything she'd been carrying. Then she nodded. Let's end this. They rode through the night. Josie had argued against it. Too dangerous, too reckless. But Caleb was done waiting, done playing by Victor's rules. By the time they reached Knight's Crossing at dawn, they had a plan. Victor was staying at the boarding house. Caleb walked straight through the front door, ignoring Sarah Blake's startled protests. He found Victor in the dining room, eating breakfast like a man without a care in the world. Mr. Mercer, come to assault me again? I should warn you, the sheriff is just outside. I haven't come to fight. Caleb sat down across from him. I've come to negotiate. Victor raised an eyebrow. Really? And what could you possibly have to negotiate with? Caleb placed the marriage certificate on the table. Victor's face went white. Where did you get that? Does it matter? That document is private property. You stole it. I found it. There's a difference. Caleb leaned forward. Bigamy is a serious crime, Mr. Ashworth. Federal courts take a dim view of men who marry multiple women. This proves nothing. It's a forgery. Is it? With your signature? With church records that can be verified? Caleb smiled grimly. I'm just a simple cowboy, but even I know what happens to lawyers who commit fraud. Victor's jaw worked. His hands clenched the edge of the table. What do you want? I want you to withdraw your custody petition. I want you to sign away any claim to Eleanor's estate, and I want you to leave California and never come back. You're insane. Maybe, but I'm also the man holding the document that could destroy your career. Caleb stood up. You have until noon tomorrow to decide. After that, this certificate goes to the federal marshal. He walked out without looking back. Josie was waiting outside, her face taut with anxiety. Did it work? We'll see. What if he calls your bluff? Then we send the certificate to the marshal and hope for the best. That's your plan? Hope for the best? You got a better one? Josie opened her mouth, closed it. Then, despite everything, she laughed. No, I really don't. They spent the rest of the day at the ranch, waiting. Caleb tried to work, but his mind wouldn't settle. Josie paced the house like a caged animal, picking things up and putting them down again. By sunset, there was still no word. He's not going to surrender, Josie said. Men like Victor never do. Maybe not. So what do we do? Caleb was about to answer when the sound of hoofbeats reached them. Multiple horses, coming fast. He grabbed his rifle and went to the door. Josie was right behind him. 4 riders emerged from the dust. The sheriff, 2 deputies, and Victor Ashworth. Caleb Mercer, the sheriff's voice rang out. You're under arrest for assault, theft, and blackmail. That's a lie. You can explain it to the judge. The sheriff dismounted. Put down the rifle and come quietly. I don't want any trouble. Caleb looked at Victor, sitting smug on his horse, watching it all unfold. He looked at Josie, her face pale with fear. He looked at the rifle in his hands. Then he set it down and walked forward. Caleb, no! Josie grabbed his arm. You can't let them... It's all right. He covered her hand with his. Stay here. Guard the letters. The ones with the red ribbon. What about them? Read them. It's time. The deputies took him by the arms. Caleb didn't resist as they led him toward the horses. Victor rode closer, leaning down so only Caleb could hear. You should have taken the money, cowboy. Now you're going to lose everything. Caleb met his eyes, didn't blink, didn't flinch. I've already lost everything once. I survived. He smiled grimly. Can you say the same? Victor's face twisted with something that might have been uncertainty. Then the deputies pulled Caleb away, and there was nothing left but dust and fading hoofbeats, and Josie's voice calling his name as the night swallowed him whole. The jail cell was smaller than Caleb expected. 8 feet by 8 feet. A cot that smelled like old sweat. A bucket in the corner. Bars that needed oiling. They squeaked every time someone walked past. He'd been here 2 days. 2 days of silence and cold food, and the sound of Victor Ashworth's laughter echoing in his memory. The sheriff came by twice a day. Decent man, apologetic. I don't like this any more than you do, Caleb, but the law's the law. The law is being used as a weapon. That's for the judge to decide. The hearing was scheduled for tomorrow. Caleb had no attorney, no witnesses, no way to prove that Victor had orchestrated the whole thing. All he had was hope, and that was fading fast. On the morning of the 3rd day, footsteps approached his cell. different from the sheriff's heavy tread, lighter, quicker. Josie appeared at the bars. "You look terrible," she said. "You look beautiful." The words came out before he could stop them. Josie's eyes widened. A flush crept up her neck. "That's the isolation talking," she said. "Maybe. Or maybe it's the truth." They stared at each other through the bars. So much unsaid between them. So much that couldn't be said. Not now. Not yet. "I read the letters," Josie finally said. "The ones with the red ribbon." Caleb's stomach dropped. And I understand now why Eleanor made the choices she made, why she couldn't come home. Josie's voice cracked. And why she trusted you to be the one who fixed it. "I'm in jail, Josie. I can't fix anything from here." "That's where you're wrong." She reached through the bars and pressed something into his hand. A folded piece of paper. "Reverend Goodwin made it to San Francisco. He found Clara. And he found something else." "What?" "A witness. One of the nuns at the Sisters of Mercy. She was there when Victor visited Eleanor in the final weeks. She heard him threatening her. Heard him say he'd take Clara and make sure no one ever found her." Caleb's heart stopped. "She'll testify?" "She's on her way here now, along with Clara." Josie's eyes were bright with tears. "The Reverend is bringing them both. They'll be here by tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow morning is too late. The hearing is at 9. "I know. That's why I need you to stall." "How?" "I don't know. Make something up. Cause a scene. Do whatever you have to do to give them time to arrive." Caleb looked at the paper in his hand, unfolded it. It was a drawing, crayon on rough paper. A stick figure with brown hair standing next to a house. Underneath, in a child's wobbly handwriting, "For my new daddy." His throat closed up. "Clara drew it," Josie said softly. "The Reverend told her about you. Told her you were fighting to protect her. She made that for you." Caleb couldn't speak, could barely breathe. A 3-year-old girl he'd never met had drawn him a picture, had called him Daddy. "I won't let her down," he managed. "I know you won't." The sheriff's footsteps echoed in the corridor. Josie stepped back from the bars. "I have to go. Victor has people watching me." "Be careful." "I will." She started to turn away, then stopped. "Caleb?" "Yes?" "When this is over, when we've won, there are things I need to tell you. Things about Eleanor. About me. About—" She trailed off. "Just survive tomorrow. Please." "I will. I promise." She disappeared down the corridor. Caleb pressed his back against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the cold floor, Clara's drawing clutched to his chest. Tomorrow. Everything would be decided tomorrow. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread through Knight's Crossing like wildfire. The abandoned husband. The dead wife's sister. The fancy San Francisco lawyer. The mysterious child. It was better than any dime novel, and everyone wanted to see how it ended. Caleb stood before the judge in chains. Victor sat at the prosecutor's table, looking smug as ever. The sheriff stood by the door, hand on his pistol. Judge Warren was an old man with white hair and sharp eyes. He'd been presiding over cases in this territory for 30 years, and he had no patience for theatrics. "Let's get this started," he said. "Mr. Ashworth, you file charges against Mr. Mercer. State your case." Victor rose, adjusting his cuffs. "Your Honor, the defendant assaulted me in broad daylight in front of multiple witnesses. He then broke into my private correspondence and stole documents which he used to blackmail me. These are serious crimes that demand serious punishment." And you have evidence of this? I have witnesses to the assault. As for the theft and blackmail, I didn't steal anything, Caleb said. The judge's eyes snapped to him. You'll get your turn, Mr. Mercer. Until then, hold your tongue. But, Your Honor, I said hold your tongue. Caleb clenched his jaw, held his tongue. Victor continued. The defendant came to my boarding house and presented me with a document he had clearly stolen from my private papers. He then demanded that I withdraw legal proceedings against him or face exposure. That, Your Honor, is textbook blackmail. And what document are we talking about? A personal letter, nothing more. That's a lie! The words burst out of Caleb before he could stop them. It wasn't a letter. It was a marriage certificate. Proof that you committed bigamy when you married Eleanor Whitmore while your wife was still alive. The courtroom erupted. Voices shouting, people standing, the judge's gavel pounding like thunder. Order! Order in this court! Judge Warren's face was red with fury. Mr. Mercer, I warned you once. One more outburst and I'll have you gagged. Your Honor, please, silence! Victor was smiling. That cold, satisfied smile that made Caleb want to tear through the chains and put his hands around the man's throat. As you can see, Your Honor, Victor said calmly, the defendant is unstable and prone to violent outbursts. This is exactly why I filed for custody of my daughter, to protect her from the influence of such a man. Your daughter? The judge raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware there was a custody matter involved in this case. There is, Your Honor, a separate filing in San Francisco, but given Mr. Mercer's behavior, I believe it's relevant to his character. I see, the judge made a note. And where is this child now? In the care of a religious institution in San Francisco. I intend to retrieve her as soon as these proceedings are concluded. The hell you will! This time Caleb didn't care about the judge's warnings. He surged forward, chains rattling, guards grabbing his arms. That child is not yours, Ashworth. You know it, and I know it. Mr. Mercer, the judge slammed his gavel. One more word, and I'll hold you in contempt. Hold me in contempt, then. At least let me speak the truth before you lock me away. The courtroom went silent. Judge Warren stared at Caleb for a long moment. Then, slowly, he set down his gavel. All right, Mr. Mercer. You want to speak? Speak. But I warn you, if I hear one more baseless accusation, you'll spend the next year in a cell. Caleb took a breath, steadied himself. My wife, Eleanor Mercer, left me 5 years ago. I didn't know why until a week ago, when her sister brought me letters Eleanor had written but never sent. In those letters, Eleanor explained everything. The baby she lost, her depression, her decision to leave, and she explained what happened after. He looked at Victor, directly at him. She went to work for Victor Ashworth as a housekeeper. He seduced her, made her believe he would leave his wife, made her believe they were married in a ceremony that turned out to be fraudulent because his wife was still alive. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge held up his hand for silence. When Eleanor discovered the truth, she tried to leave, but by then she was pregnant with Clara, and Victor threatened to destroy her if she didn't stay. This is absurd, Victor said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Eleanor spent the last years of her life trying to protect her daughter from this man. She created a trust in my name, hoping I would honor her wishes and keep Clara safe. And she wrote me letters, dozens of letters, explaining everything. Conveniently unprovable, Victor sneered. The letters are proof. Her handwriting, her words, her dying wishes. Letters can be forged. Can witnesses be forged too? The courtroom door burst open. Every head turned. The sheriff drew his pistol. Reverend Samuel Goodwin walked in. Behind him was a woman in a nun's habit, and in her arms was a little girl with auburn hair and wide, frightened eyes. Clara. Time seemed to stop. Caleb couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this child, Eleanor's child, who had his wife's hair and her sister's eyes and the innocent face of someone who had no idea how many lives were being torn apart over her future. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Warren demanded. "Forgive the interruption, Your Honor." Reverend Goodwin walked to the front of the courtroom, his old bones moving with surprising purpose. "I'm Samuel Goodwin, minister of the Presbyterian Church here in Knight's Crossing. I've brought a witness who has testimony relevant to this case. And you think you can just walk into my courtroom and—" "I think, Your Honor, that you'll want to hear what Sister Margaret has to say." The nun stepped forward. She was young, barely 30, with steady hands and clear eyes. "Your Honor, my name is Sister Margaret Ann, of the Sisters of Mercy in San Francisco. I cared for Eleanor Mercer during her final illness." "This is highly irregular," Victor said, rising from his seat. "This woman has no standing in these proceedings. Sit down, Mr. Ashworth." The judge's voice was iron. "I'll decide what's relevant." He turned to the nun. "Speak, sister." "I was with Eleanor when she died, Your Honor. I heard her final confession, and I witnessed several visits from Mr. Ashworth during her illness." "What kind of visits?" "Threatening visits." Sister Margaret's voice was calm but firm. "Mr. Ashworth came to Eleanor's sick room 3 times in her final weeks. Each time, he demanded that she sign over custody of Clara. Each time, he threatened her." "What kind of threats?" "He said he would take Clara away and make sure Eleanor never saw her again. He said he would tell the world that Clara was illegitimate, that Eleanor was a whore, that no one would ever believe a dying woman's word against his." The courtroom had gone completely silent. "And what did Mrs. Mercer say to these threats?" "She refused him every time." Sister Margaret's eyes found Caleb's. "She said that her husband would protect Clara. She said that Caleb Mercer was the only man she'd ever truly loved, and that he would keep her daughter safe, even though she'd broken his heart." Caleb's vision blurred. He didn't try to stop the tears. "She talked about him constantly in her final days," Sister Margaret continued. "About how she'd wronged him. About how she wished she'd been brave enough to go home. About how she prayed that someday he would forgive her." "This is irrelevant," Victor said, but his voice had gone thin and reedy. "The dying words of a consumptive woman proved nothing." "I'm not finished, Mr. Ashworth." The nun reached into her habit and produced a folded document. "Before Eleanor died, she asked me to witness her signature on a new will. A will that supersedes any previous documents, created in the presence of 2 witnesses and notarized by a justice of the peace." "That's impossible. I destroyed—" Victor stopped, realized what he'd just admitted. The courtroom erupted. Judge Warren didn't even bother with his gavel. He simply stood up, and his presence was enough to silence the crowd. "Did you just say you destroyed legal documents, Mr. Ashworth?" Victor's face had gone the color of old ash. I misspoke." "Did you?" The judge held out his hand to Sister Margaret. "Give me that will." She handed it over. The judge read it in silence, his expression growing darker with every line. "This document names Caleb Mercer as the sole guardian of Clara Eleanor Mercer. It names him as the executor of Eleanor's estate. And it contains a sworn statement that Victor Ashworth used coercion and fraud to maintain control over Eleanor during her pregnancy and the first years of Clara's life." "It's a forgery," Victor said desperately. "She was dying. She wasn't in her right mind." "The document is witnessed by 2 Sisters of Mercy and notarized by a California Justice of the Peace." The judge looked at Victor with contempt. "And it was created 3 weeks before Eleanor's death, which means she had ample time to reconsider if she wished." Your Honor, I can explain. I don't want your explanations, Mr. Ashworth. I want the truth. The judge turned to the sheriff. Remove the defendant's chains. Your Honor? You heard me. Remove them. The sheriff crossed to Caleb and unlocked his shackles. Caleb rubbed his wrists, barely able to process what was happening. Mr. Mercer, the judge said, based on the evidence presented here today, I am dismissing all charges against you. Furthermore, I am initiating an investigation into Mr. Ashworth's conduct, including possible charges of fraud, coercion, and destruction of legal documents. You can't do this! Victor was on his feet, his face twisted with rage. I am an attorney. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Mr. Ashworth. I suggest you exercise it. The judge nodded to the sheriff. Take him into custody. Two deputies moved toward Victor. He backed away, knocking over his chair. You don't understand. You don't know what that woman was, what she did. She trapped me. Victor. The single word cut through his ranting. Josie had stepped forward, her face pale, but her eyes blazing. My sister is dead. She can't defend herself against your lies, but I can. You? Victor laughed, an ugly, desperate sound. You're just as pathetic as she was. Two Whitmore sisters, both throwing themselves at men who didn't want them. Maybe so, but at least we knew what love was. Josie's voice was steady. You never loved Eleanor. You never loved anyone except yourself. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that a dying woman outsmarted you. Victor's face contorted. He lunged toward Josie. Caleb moved faster than he'd ever moved in his life. He caught Victor's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him face first into the prosecutor's table. Victor's nose made a crunching sound. Blood sprayed across the papers. Touch her, Caleb said quietly, and I'll kill you, right here, in front of God and everyone. Get him off me! The deputies pulled Caleb back. Victor slumped against the table, blood streaming down his face. All his sophistication and smugness dissolved into something small and pathetic. Take him away, the judge said. I've seen enough. They dragged Victor out of the courtroom. His protests echoed down the hallway, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. And then there was silence. Caleb turned around. Josie was standing a few feet away, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, Reverend Goodwin was smiling like a man who'd just witnessed a miracle. And in Sister Margaret's arms, Clara was watching Caleb with wide, curious eyes. He walked toward her slowly, knelt down so he was at her level. Hello, Clara. Are you my new daddy? The question was so simple, so innocent, so devastating. I'm Caleb. I was married to your mama. Mama's in heaven now, Sister Margaret told me. That's right, she is. She said you'd come for me. Clara reached out and touched his face with one small hand. She said you were the bravest man she ever knew. Caleb couldn't speak. The tears he'd been fighting finally broke free. She said you'd keep me safe, Clara continued. Will you? Will you keep me safe, Caleb? He took her tiny hand in his, held it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. Yes, he said. I promise. I will keep you safe for the rest of my life. Clara smiled, Eleanor's smile, on a face that was entirely her own, and threw her arms around his neck. I knew it, she whispered. Mama said I could trust you, and mamas are always right. Caleb held her close, breathing in the scent of soap and innocence, feeling something in his broken heart finally begin to mend. Behind him, Josie watched through her tears, and for the first time in 5 years, the future looked like something worth fighting for. The first week was chaos. Clara didn't understand why she couldn't go back to the convent. She cried for Sister Margaret. She cried for her small bed in the dormitory. She cried because everything was strange and new and frightening. Caleb didn't know what to do with a crying child. 5 years of solitude hadn't prepared him for this. He stood helpless while Clara sobbed, looking at Josie with desperate eyes. "Pick her up," Josie said. "What?" "Pick her up. Hold her. She needs to feel safe." Caleb knelt down and awkwardly gathered Clara into his arms. She was so small, so fragile, like holding a baby bird. "I want Mama," Clara wailed. "I know, sweetheart, I know." "Why did Mama have to go to heaven?" "Because," Caleb's voice broke, "because sometimes people get sick, and the angels need them more than we do." "That's stupid. I need her more than the angels do." Despite everything, Caleb almost laughed. Eleanor's daughter, all right. Fierce, even in grief. "You're right," he said. "It is stupid. But that's how it works sometimes. And all we can do is remember the people we love and try to make them proud." Clara pulled back and looked at him with tear-stained eyes. "Did you love Mama?" "Yes, very much." "Do you still love her, even though she went away?" Caleb thought about the letters, the years of silence, the truth that had finally emerged. "I never stopped loving her," he said. "Not even when I was angry. Not even when I didn't understand." Clara considered this. Then she put her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. The days fell into a rhythm. Mornings, Caleb worked the ranch while Josie cared for Clara. Afternoons, they ate lunch together, the three of them around the kitchen table like a real family. Evenings, Caleb read to Clara from the books Josie had brought from San Francisco, stories about princesses and dragons and brave knights who never gave up. Clara began to smile again, then to laugh, then to run through the ranch like she owned it, chasing chickens and befriending the horses, and asking 1,000 questions about everything she saw. Why do cows have 4 stomachs? Why is the sky blue? Why doesn't Aunt Josie have a husband? That last question made Josie choke on her coffee. That's a complicated question, Clara." "Why?" "Because grown-up things are complicated." "That's what Mama always said when she didn't want to answer." Josie and Caleb exchanged a look. Despite everything, they both smiled. "Your mama was a smart woman," Caleb said. "I know." Clara picked up her fork and attacked her eggs with determination. "She told me." 2 weeks after the trial, Reverend Goodwin came to dinner. He'd aged a decade in the past month. The journey to San Francisco and back had taken everything out of him. But his eyes were bright and his spirit was strong. "Victor Ashworth has been formally charged," he said as they sat on the porch after Clara had gone to bed. "Bigamy, fraud, destruction of legal documents. The federal marshal expects a conviction." "Will he go to prison?" Josie asked. "Most likely, 5 to 10 years if the judge isn't feeling merciful." Caleb stared out at the darkening land. "Good." "There's something else," the Reverend hesitated. "His wife, his real wife, Margaret. She died 3 weeks ago, just before the trial. The consumption took her too." Silence. "So he's alone now," Josie said quietly. "Yes, no wife, no child, no career. Everything he built, destroyed by his own greed." Caleb thought he would feel satisfaction, triumph, something. Instead, he just felt tired. "It's over then," he said. "The legal matters are over, yes." The Reverend's eyes moved between Caleb and Josie. "But some things, I suspect, are just beginning." Neither of them responded, but neither of them denied it either. A month passed. Then 2. Summer burned itself out, and autumn crept in, painting the hills in shades of gold and amber. Clara started lessons with Josie, learning her letters and numbers at the kitchen table while Caleb worked outside. She was bright, quick, hungry for knowledge. "She's got Eleanor's mind," Josie said one evening. "The way she sees patterns, makes connections. Eleanor was the same way." "And your determination," Caleb added. Josie looked up from the sampler she was embroidering. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Clara doesn't give up. When she doesn't understand something, she keeps pushing until she does. That's not Eleanor." "Eleanor ran from things that scared her." He paused. "Clara fights, like you do." Josie's cheeks flushed. "I'm just her aunt." "You're more than that. You know you are." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to name. "Caleb." "I know. It's too soon. It's complicated. It's not about being too soon." Josie set down her embroidery. "It's about being sure. I can't be a replacement for Eleanor. I won't be." "I'm not asking you to be." "Then what are you asking?" Caleb stood up, crossed to where she sat, knelt in front of her so their eyes were level. "I'm asking if you feel what I feel. Whatever this is between us. I'm asking if it's real." Josie's breath caught. "It's real." "Then why are we pretending it isn't?" "Because I'm scared." The admission came out raw, unvarnished. "Because I watched my sister make a mess of her life by following her heart instead of her head. Because I swore I'd never be that vulnerable with anyone." "And now?" "Now I look at you with Clara. I see the man you're becoming, the father you're becoming. And I think, maybe being vulnerable isn't the worst thing in the world." Caleb took her hands in his. "Josie, I'm not perfect. I've got a temper. I don't always say the right things. I spent 5 years nursing a grudge against a woman who was dying of guilt and grief." "I know." "But I'm trying to be better. For Clara. For myself." He swallowed hard. "For you." "I know that too." "Then give me a chance. Give us a chance. Not as a replacement for what I had with Eleanor. As something new. Something that belongs only to us." Josie stared at him for a long moment. Caleb could see the war in her eyes, fear and hope, doubt and desire. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when she pulled back, she was smiling. "One chance," she said. "That's all you get. That's all I need." The town talked. Of course they did. The scandalous widow's sister, moving from houseguest to something more. The abandoned husband, finding love with his dead wife's kin. It was enough gossip to fuel Knight's Crossing for years. But something strange happened. One by one, people stopped whispering and started accepting. Martha Brennan at the general store was first. "You two seem happy," she said one day as Josie bought supplies. "That's what matters, isn't it? Life's too short for anything else." Then old Pete Morrison, who tipped his hat to Caleb in the street. "Glad to see things working out for you, son. You deserve it." Then the ranchers at the cattle auction, who clapped Caleb on the back and asked about that pretty lady and her niece. Even the church ladies, who had been the most vicious gossips, began to soften. Reverend Goodwin's blessing helped. But it was Clara who won them over. Her bright smile, her endless questions, her way of charming everyone she met. "She's got a gift," Josie said one Sunday after church. "She makes people want to be kind." "She gets that from her mother," Caleb said. "You think so?" "Eleanor could charm anyone when she wanted to. It's how she survived after she left. It's how she built a life in San Francisco." He paused. "It's how she kept Victor at bay for as long as she did." Josie was quiet for a moment. "Do you still think about her, Eleanor?" "Every day." Does it bother you that I look like her sometimes? That Clara looks like her?" Caleb stopped walking, turned to face Josie directly. "You don't look like her. Not really. You have different eyes, different expressions, different everything." He touched her face gently. "And Clara is her own person. Yes, she reminds me of Eleanor, but she's not Eleanor. She's something new, something that belongs to the future, not the past." "And me? You are the best thing that's happened to me since I stopped believing good things could happen." He smiled. "Is that clear enough?" Josie laughed, a real laugh, free of shadows. "Clear enough." 3 months after the trial, a letter arrived from San Francisco. Sister Margaret had written with news. Victor Ashworth had been convicted on all charges. He would spend the next 7 years in federal prison. His assets had been seized and would be distributed according to Eleanor's will, which meant the money, all of it, now belonged to Clara. "What do we do with it?" Josie asked as they sat at the kitchen table that night. "Put it in trust for her. Let it grow until she's old enough to decide for herself." "That's a lot of money for a little girl." "She didn't ask for it. Neither did I." Caleb folded the letter carefully. "But Eleanor wanted Clara to have choices, to have opportunities. I'm not going to take that away from her." "What about the house in San Francisco?" "Sell it. Use the money to expand the ranch. Build something that will last." Josie reached across the table and took his hand. "You've thought about this." "I've had time to think." "And what did you decide? About us?" Caleb looked at her, this woman who had arrived at his gate with forgiveness and stayed to rebuild his life. This woman who loved his dead wife's daughter as her own. This woman who had slowly, impossibly, become the center of his world. "I decided that I don't want to wait anymore," he said. "Wait for what?" "For everything, for certainty, for the perfect moment." He stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her chair. "I've spent 5 years waiting, Josie. Waiting for Eleanor to come back, waiting for answers, waiting for something to make sense. I'm done waiting." "Caleb, what do you—" "Marry me." The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. "I know it's fast. I know people will talk. I know there are 100 reasons why this is a bad idea." He pulled a small box from his pocket, his mother's ring, the one he'd saved for Eleanor and never given her. "But I also know that I love you. And I know that Clara needs a real family. And I know that life is too short to waste on fear." Josie stared at the ring. Her eyes were bright with tears. "You kept this? All these years?" "I was waiting for the right person. I just didn't know it yet." "Caleb," she shook her head, laughing and crying at the same time. "This is insane." "Probably. People will think we're crazy." "Let them. I don't even know if I want to be a rancher's wife. I've never lived outside a city. I don't know anything about cattle or crops or—" "I'll teach you." "And Clara, what will we tell Clara?" "The truth, that her mother wanted her to have a family, and that's what we're going to be." Josie took a shaky breath, looked at the ring, looked at Caleb. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes, you impossible man. Yes, I'll marry you." She grabbed his face and kissed him hard. "But if you ever make me regret this, I won't." "Promise?" "On my life." She let him slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her all along. The wedding was small, simple, perfect. Reverend Goodwin officiated, his voice strong despite his age. Clara served as flower girl, scattering petals with more enthusiasm than precision. Hank and Diego stood as witnesses, both wearing their Sunday best and looking deeply uncomfortable. The whole town came. Not to gossip, though some surely did, but to celebrate, to wish them well, to acknowledge that sometimes, out of the ashes of tragedy, something beautiful could grow. Josie wore a dress of pale green, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nothing like a traditional bride. But when Caleb saw her walking toward him down the aisle, he knew he'd never seen anything more beautiful in his life. "You sure about this?" he whispered as she reached him. "Ask me that again, and I'll shoot you. That's my girl." The ceremony was brief. The kiss was not. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was tugging at Caleb's sleeve. "Does this mean Aunt Josie is my mama now?" The question silenced the crowd. Josie knelt down so she was at Clara's level. "I can never replace your mama, sweetheart. She'll always be your mama, no matter what." "But what do I call you?" Josie looked at Caleb. He nodded. "You can call me whatever feels right," Josie said. "Aunt Josie, Josie, or, if you want, you can call me Mama too. I'll never take Eleanor's place, but I can be another Mama, someone who loves you just as much." Clara thought about this with the intense concentration only a child can manage. "Can I have two mamas? One in heaven and one here?" "Of course you can, sweetheart." Clara smiled, that bright, impossible smile that reminded Caleb so much of Eleanor in her best moments. "Okay, then you're my Mama Josie, and my first mama is Mama Eleanor. And Caleb is my daddy." She looked around at the assembled crowd. "Is that okay with everyone?" Laughter rippled through the church. Even Caleb, tears streaming down his face, couldn't help but join in. "Yeah, Clara," he said, lifting her into his arms. "That's okay with everyone." The reception was held at the ranch. Tables set up in the yard. Food that half the town had contributed. Music from a fiddle and a harmonica, and someone's old piano hauled out from the boarding house. Caleb danced with Josie, danced with Clara, danced with Mrs. Patterson from the general store, who told him she'd always known he was a good man, even when others doubted. "Eleanor would be happy," Josie said late in the evening, as they watched Clara fall asleep against Hank's shoulder. "You think so?" "I know so. She wanted this for you, for Clara, for all of us." "How do you know?" Josie reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Because she told me, in the last letter she ever wrote." Caleb took the paper, unfolded it. It was dated the day before Eleanor died. "My dearest Josie, when you read this, I'll be gone. Don't be sad for me. I've made my peace. I have one last request. Not about Clara. I know you'll protect her. Not about the money. I know Caleb will use it wisely. This is about you. I've watched you guard your heart your whole life. Watched you push away anyone who got too close. I understand why. Our parents taught us that love was dangerous, that vulnerability was weakness. But they were wrong. Caleb is a good man, the best man I've ever known. I wasn't brave enough to deserve him, but you are. Don't run from what you feel. Don't let fear steal your chance at happiness. And don't ever think that loving him is a betrayal of me. I'm giving you my blessing, Josie, my permission, my hope. Be happy, both of you. All my love, forever, Eleanor." Caleb read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and handed it back to Josie. "She knew," he said quietly. "She knew everything, even things we didn't know ourselves." "How long have you had this?" "Since the beginning. It was with the letters you never read, the ones tied with the red ribbon." Josie's eyes were wet. "I was going to show you before the wedding, but I wanted you to choose me because you wanted to, not because my dead sister told you to." Caleb pulled her close, held her tight. "I chose you because you're you," he said into her hair. "Because you showed up at my gate and turned my whole world upside down. Because you fight for the people you love. Because you make me want to be better than I am." And the letter? The letter just proves that Eleanor was smarter than both of us. Like Clara said, mamas are always right. Josie laughed through her tears. "I love you, Caleb Mercer." "I love you too, Josie Mercer." They stood there in the fading light, holding each other, while their daughter slept and their guests celebrated, and the future stretched out before them like an endless summer road. 1 year later, Clara had a baby brother. They named him Samuel, after the reverend who had brought them all together. He had Caleb's dark hair and Josie's gray eyes, and a cry loud enough to wake the cattle in the back pasture. "He's perfect," Caleb said, holding his son for the first time. "He's loud," Clara complained, covering her ears. "You were loud too," Josie said, exhausted but radiant. "Ask Sister Margaret." "I was not." "You absolutely were. You kept the whole convent awake for weeks." Clara huffed indignantly. But when Caleb lowered Samuel so she could see him, her expression softened. "He's really little." "You were little once too." "Will he like horses? I want someone to ride with." "He'll like whatever you teach him to like. That's the good part about being a big sister." Clara considered this. Then she leaned down and kissed Samuel's forehead with unexpected gentleness. "Hi, baby brother. I'm Clara. I'm going to teach you everything. Mama Eleanor is watching us from heaven, and Mama Josie is right here, and Daddy is the bravest man in the whole world." She paused. "Don't worry. I'll take care of you. That's what family does." Caleb looked at Josie. She was crying. He was too. "When did she get so wise?" he whispered. "She's had good teachers." They sat together, the four of them, this impossible, beautiful family, as the summer sun streamed through the window and the ranch hummed with life outside. Caleb thought about the journey that had brought them here, the grief and the anger, the letters and the lies, the battles fought and won, the love that had grown from the ashes of loss. Eleanor was gone, but she'd left behind a daughter who carried her spirit, a sister who carried her blessing. A legacy of love that Victor Ashworth, with all his money and power, had never been able to destroy. Some people called it fate. Others called it luck. Reverend Goodwin called it providence. Caleb called it family. And family, he'd learned, was the only thing worth fighting for. 5 years later, on a warm summer evening, Caleb sat on the porch watching his children play in the yard. Clara, now 8, was teaching Samuel to rope a fence post. She had Eleanor's patience and Josie's determination. Samuel had his father's stubbornness and his mother's laugh. Josie came out with lemonade and sat beside him. She was rounder now, their third child due in the fall, but her eyes were the same, sharp, warm, full of love. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "That day you arrived at my gate. How different everything was. You almost didn't let me in." "I know. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd turned you away. You'd probably still be eating beans and jerky and feeling sorry for yourself." "Probably." He took her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming, for staying, for not giving up on me when I'd given up on myself." Josie leaned her head against his shoulder. "Eleanor knew what she was doing when she sent me here." "She usually did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, listening to the sounds of the ranch, feeling the warmth of the summer evening on their skin. Somewhere, Caleb liked to think, Eleanor was watching too. Not with jealousy or regret, but with peace, with joy, with the knowledge that her final wish had come true. Her daughter was safe. Her sister was happy. The man she'd loved had found his way back to life. And the family she'd dreamed of, the family she'd never been brave enough to claim, had finally become real. Not despite the pain they'd all endured. Because of it. Caleb Mercer had spent 5 years learning that love could break you. Then he'd spent the rest of his life learning that love could put you back together again. Stronger, wiser, and more grateful than before. That was Eleanor's true legacy. Not the money, not the ranch, not even Clara. It was the simple, profound truth that forgiveness was possible, that second chances were real, and that the human heart could hold more love than anyone ever imagined, if only you had the courage to let it. And Caleb did. He finally, truly did.